Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, shockingly enough, GamingGang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, August 4th, 2026. This is a live show 1347. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out it's super casual around here. Just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop role-playing game news. And I will normally tackle a topic related to our hobby, which we will be doing tonight as I provide you with a bit of a Gen Con 2026 recap as experienced by yours truly. So it's basically a recap of my experience at the con, not necessarily all the goings on at the convention. I will also share some thoughts about the Dungeons Dragons Keynote, because Elliot Miller and I were there. We caught the entirety of it, and I will share some thoughts about that in just a bit. But of course, we are going to kick off with the latest in tabletop role-playing game news in a moment. Should also mention, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to see here on YouTube. Come on, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Then, of course, because this is a live show, there is chat available. Now, you must be a subscriber to the channel in order to take part in chat. You have to be a subscriber for at least an hour. But if you check out that box and you want to say howdy, maybe you got a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my absolute best to respond. First out the gate tonight is the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D. No Limelight Productions is also with us, as is DB. So welcome. I will take a guess. Chat might be, on one hand, quieter than usual, because I did not post earlier that there was a show tonight. Yeah, I was running around doing a bunch of stuff. So I didn't get around to actually posting anything until about 30 minutes. It's like, hey, I'm live in 30 minutes. Usually earlier in the day, I gotta remind people. So on one hand, might be a little quieter in chat. And then on the other hand, we might have a few new folks pop on in, because my coverage of Gen Con's been doing pretty good. More views than last year, most definitely. We'll get to that when we talk about the recap. So we'll tackle that in just a bit. Harvey Chuckles is also jumping on into chat. So without further ado, let's jump on into the news, because Free League Publishing revealed 2 new supplements for the One Ring, as well as Lord of the Rings role-playing RPGs. I've got the scoop. These new expansions explore Gondor, Rohan, and the forces of the enemy. Launching on BackerKit this September, Free League's campaign for the One Ring, the award-winning tabletop role-playing game based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, features 2 new expansions and revised core rules. You'll have the White Tower and the Hall of Gold, a major campaign expansion exploring Gondor and Rohan, the last great realms of men in the west of Middle-earth. Then we've got Creatures Strange and Foul, a bestiary filled with enemies from the shadows of the Third Age, including black Numenorean spies, I think that's how it's pronounced, Haradrim champions, and ancient evils from forgotten ages. Then we've got the revised core rules, an updated edition of the award-winning game featuring new cover art by Antonio DeLuca, as well as clarified rules. The revised book remains fully compatible with previously released supplements and adventures. Visit the campaign's pre-launch page. You can learn more, as well as reserve your pledge for just $1 in order to receive an exclusive dice bag for the One Ring. Of course, you have to actually pledge support for the books. Don't just get a dice bag for $1. These 2 expansions will also be adapted for the Lord of the Rings role-playing, the 5e version of the One Ring. They'll be released under the titles Realms of the South and Of Orcs and Evil Things. The campaign also includes limited collector's editions featuring faux leather covers with silver or gold foil detailing. Available exclusively through the Backer Kit campaign, these editions will never be reprinted. Of course, I will have more information once this goes live. So very nice. Good to see more support for the One Ring. Of course, I did interview Tomas over at Free League Publishing at Gen Con. We talked a little bit more about this. I would say the amount of information you got in that news item probably covers all the bases of what we talked about as far as these books. But of course, there is a whole lot cooking with Free League Publishing. So you'll learn more about that. On to our next news piece, there is a new supplement which has arrived for the Traveler role-playing game. I've got the lowdown on the 5th Frontier War Fleets of the Minor Powers from Mongoose Publishing. The minor powers all have a part to play in the 5th Frontier War. Each has its own equipment, organization, and doctrine. High-technology Darien ships mounting advanced Mason cannon face off against Sword World mine layers and raiders. Mercenaries guard the space lanes against Vargar corsairs and opportunist conquerors. The scale is smaller, but the stakes are no lower. Should a squadron commander attack head-on or make a less risky slashing pass? Is a retreating enemy force drawing its enemies into a stealthy ambush or a minefield? Can the enemy's superior strength be nullified by causing their formation to become disordered? Can the Darians really deploy the ultimate superweapon, the Star Trigger? Fleets of the Minor Powers explores the fighting strengths, tactics, and the doctrines of combatants outside of the warships of the Zodani and Imperium, bringing a new dimension to the 5th Frontier War. The 224-page hardcover with PDF is available for an MSRP of $49.99. The PDF can be had over at Drive-Thru RPG for $29.99. Rocking on with more Traveler releases. Another release in the 5th Frontier War series. I like that cover art. Pretty cool. Pretty cool cover art. Boomerman Dan Webb is with us tonight. Welcome back. On to our next news piece. Chaosium Inc. is teamed with Humble Bundle for a basic role-playing offer, and I've got the deets on the deal. Expand your role-playing horizons. Dive into the role-playing worlds of Chaosium in this PDF bundle full of role-playing adventures, environments, and rulebooks. Get started with the fundamentals in instructional manuals like Basic Role-Playing, Universal Game Engine, and Basic Role-Playing Creatures. Enter the Demimonde and solve magical mysteries in Rivers of London. Turn back the clock to the Age of Heroes and Age of Vikings. This bundle has all the source books, outlines, and creation manuals to guide you on your adventures. So grab it now at the price of your choosing and support the World Wildlife Fund with your purchase. You can get started for only $5. If you want, you can go all in and score all 14 PDFs, which are on offer, for a donation of $18 or more through August 18th. Now, these keys do expire, so you'll have to redeem them before August 18th, 2027, and The keys are redeemable through the drive-through RPG website. Gotta say, smoking deal. Rivers of London, Age of Vikings, basic role-playing. There are 2 or 3 Rivers of London PDFs. There are like 2 or 3 Age of Vikings PDFs. There's a good amount here to dive on into for $18. Pretty smoking deal. Tesco Love has popped on into chat. Welcome again. On our next news piece, the digest edition of Terry Pratchett's Discworld Adventures in Ankh-Morpork is coming to stores. I've got the skinny from Modiphius Entertainment. Based on Sir Terry Pratchett's beloved fantasy series, Adventures in Ankh-Morpork is the officially licensed Discworld tabletop role-playing game. Set in the series' most enthusiastically self-interested city, Adventures in Ankh-Morpork invites you to tell stories where heroism, bureaucracy, and improbable coincidence collide with remarkable regularity. At its heart is the narrativium, I think it's supposed to be, system created specifically for life on the disc. Using the standard 7-dice poly set, D4 to D20, the rules are designed to stay out of the way whenever the story demands it. They're fast, flexible, and occasionally optional, much like many of Ankh-Morpork's civic regulations. Whether you're chasing a lead through the shades, negotiating with guild officials, fleeing from something with more legs than seems reasonable, or accidentally saving the city, the focus remains firmly on the tale being told. In Ankh-Morpork, you'll discover a city where every street has a story and every day presents fresh opportunities to become famous, infamous, or a brief footnote in a watch report. So gather your companions and take to the cobbles, because in a city this alive, adventure has a habit of finding you first. The 288-page full-color core rulebook includes the complete narrativium rule system, purpose-built for Discworld Adventures in Ankh-Morpork, plus guidance for game masters crafting stories worthy of the disc. Full character creation rules and 5 pre-generated Thieves Guild characters for players who want to hit the streets running. A tour of selected locations and organizations of Ankh-Morpork. It's funny because I always want to say Ankh-Morpork, but it is Ankh-Morpork. From the hallowed halls of the unseen university to the uneasy streets of the shades, onto Sator Square, the guilds of Ankh-Morpork, and the Patrician's Palace. Profiles of some of the city's most notable and notorious faces, such as Arch-Chancellor Mustrum Ridcully, the Librarian, Rincewind, Commander Vimes, and Lord Havelock Venonari. An NPC generator for creating fresh faces to populate the city, from ordinary citizens to exceptional nuances. And actually, it's nuisances. Bad Eggs in the Big City is a 50-page introductory adventure packed with all the mischief and civic complications one might reasonably expect from an average day in Ankh-Morpork. The 288-page digest-sized hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $54.99. The PDF alone can be had over at Drive-Thru RPG for $28. So, not being completely up on all things Modiphius Entertainment, I thought this rulebook had already come out. That's why the news piece actually talks about how it is the digest-sized rulebook. But I guess that is the rulebook. So this is not like a special edition or anything like that. It's not like a pocket edition of a Paizo book, right? Pathfinder or Starfinder. So as Tessie Trekkie, who's joined us in chat, points out, the PDF is out. Yes. And it just came out. So Tessie Trekkie says orders are being fulfilled. See, I already thought this was fulfilled. I do believe this was at Gen Con. Funny enough, we'll talk about this when I get into my recap. I really didn't have as much of an opportunity to like check things out like I normally do. So there were releases or pre-releases, I guess we'll say, that I was absolutely clueless about, this being one of them. So it's very cool to see that this is out. Tessie Trekkie says, Ankh-Morpork, glorious Ankh and pestilent Morpork, with the river Ankh walkable between. I will admit, I have not read just about any of the Discworld series. So here's the deal. I'm one of these people who I tend to read or listen to the like books in like a publishing order, not necessarily the order of like chronologically in the story, right? So I keep starting with The Color of Magic, and I just can't get into it. And I've had people tell me, don't start with that book. Don't start with the second book. Start with the fourth, Mort. So that is what I have done. Because I would like to, I'd like to get on board. But it's just, first two books, well, the first book, I should say. I can get about halfway through, and then I'm kind of like, yeah. But everyone tells me that Sir Terry Pratchett's writing improves tremendously from the first to the fourth book. And I will say I'm about 4 hours into Mort. And yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it. I would definitely listen to more. All right, we got a few more people popping on into chat here. We've got Kevin R. Smith, Semper Buffo. As I mentioned, Tessie Trekkie is with us. Muppet Joe has joined us. I believe this might be a first-time visit in chat, not recognizing that nickname. They're mentioning two books they were excited to pick up at Gen Con was Mothership, Wages of Sin. I saw that. And Frontier Scum. I've reviewed that. So there you go there. Tessie Trekkie says the Discworld RPG is delayed in Australia because the local fulfillment partner is an idiot. So Kevin R. Smith enjoyed our interview. Wow, that shouldn't say our interviews. The interviews. Our good friend of the show, Agile Monk, is also with us. They're enjoying the Gen Con interviews too, as has Semper Buffo. Kevin R. Smith even points out the $8 tier of that Chaosium bundle is good deal. So it is 3 core books, or for himself, it's 2 core books that they don't have, and more for $8. Yeah, there's, like I said, $18 for 14 PDFs. Any one of those core books in PDF alone is more than $18. So yeah, smoking deal. Smoking deal. They usually are over at Humble Bundle. All right, let's wrap up our final news story of the evening. And yes, there's plenty of news. So there are a lot of things that I have not tackled that were announced at Gen Con. We'll get to them, just not today. There's a new campaign book for Shadowrun 6th World. It's landed from Catalyst Game Labs. And here's what I know about explosive decompression. The earth below us. Ever since sentient eyes looked up into the night skies, the idea of exploring the great beyond of space has been one of the driving forces of known history. Once at the forefront of technological advancements, the deep dark void has become yet another frontier of profit for corporations and special interests who seek nothing but wealth and power. But recent events have loosened the iron grip the corporations once held on space travel, providing opportunities for those skilled, daring, and just crazy enough to run the void. They have to remember, though, that only one mistake or miscalculation, and space will quickly reveal how unforgiving it really is. Explosive Decompression is a resource and campaign book for, once again, Shadowrun Sixth World. The 184-page hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $49.99. The PDF is available over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. Yes. So, Shadowrun Sixth World goes to the stars, to infinity and beyond. Yes. Very nice. Very nice. Alrighty. So, that is it for the news tonight. Of course, I've mentioned DriveThruRPG a few times. Don't forget, the gaming gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you're going to go visit DriveThruRPG, Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault even, any of those numerous One Bookshelf sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% as a commission on most sales. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up. Help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you enjoy the Gaming Gang, there are a couple of other ways for you to support the outlet. First, you can make a one-time donation by way of PayPal. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Go Cubs, go. Go Cubs, go. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to be like, delicious. Oh, my gosh. Oh, that's so good. So good. And, of course, you can become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Hey, I should mention, we, as of August, are going to have a monthly PDF for those patrons, Patreon members. I don't think they want people calling them patrons anymore. They're Patreon members. At the $10 tier and higher, we'll get access to the PDF of the month. Stay tuned. It will be available on the 10th. What I'm thinking of doing is actually putting it on Discord. Because remember, members of the Patreon have special channels that are open on the Discord server that they have access to. Not like there's a ton of excitement, but I do tend to post links of like free stuff and things like that. And, you know, people can ask questions if they want. But I think I'm going to put it on there so that you got to be, well, I don't know. I don't want to force people to be members of the Discord server if they don't want to be one. But it would just be easier just to do that. Anyway, it's an idea. It's an idea. All right, so we got a few more people who have popped on in. Let's see. Keith McGrath is with us. Kathy Evans is also hanging with the gang. Kevin R. Smith says they backed the Kickstarter for Anarchy. Wasn't that 2.0? And have the PDF. It's one of many they need to check out. Yeah, I'm kind of curious as far as Anarchy, because isn't that kind of it's Shadowrun light. So it's like more like a streamlined rule system. And it's I think it's designed by another company, although I think it's published by Catalyst Game Labs. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. I don't know. I do not know. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, so that's the news. Also should point out, got a new opening. Most of you missed it. So there's a new opening. It's quicker. If you've watched any of the interviews, that's the new open. Although I'm not using that for reviews. I'm sticking with the one I've got for the reviews because that looks pretty cool. Got a new outro. Not crazy different. And got a new logo. That's right. I swapped up the logo a little bit. And it's funny because, gosh, off the top of my head, Tabletop Scholar? Somebody had asked me if it was okay for them to use the logo to put on a mug. And I said, yeah, sure. And they asked if I had a file that was, a large size image file. And I said, yeah, sure. So I gave them access. On the Discord, there's actually, I think they posted a little video of it. And it's a Tumblr. It's a pretty nice looking Tumblr. And then, of course, I changed the logo. But it's not a massive change. It's just the dice. The dice have changed so that instead of being 6-sided dice, they're 2 20-sided dice. And then the logo for the dispatch has changed. So little tweaks. After a few years, it's kind of like, there's just too much sameness. So I like to change things up a little bit. So just pointing it out. DB said the opening on the interviews was great. That is the open for the dispatch now. Without any text popping up. Yes. All right. Tessie Trekkie says, yeah, Shadowrun Anarchy 2.0, the Rules Light version, landed with them yesterday. Said it's nice to see a Shadowrun rule set that works. Yes, there is a lot of clunk. Boomerman Dan Webb asked, do the numbers on the 220-siders have a meaning? They do not. They don't. So I did actually, the numbers mean nothing. But I did go searching for different images of dice to kind of like cartoonize or whatever. So those just happen to be the two that I ended up on. And then the logo for the dispatch now has a circle of 20-sided dice. 2 of those are what's on the logo now. Keith McGrath says, let me get my giant D6 dice pool. Yes. All right. So tonight I am going to give you a bit of a Gen Con recap. Once again, keeping in mind, this was my experience at Gen Con, which was cut short. Going to get into that. So this isn't like, oh, and then this company did this and this company had this. No, it's kind of a little, I don't necessarily want to say inside baseball, but a little bit behind the scenes of, how my trips usually go. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm also going to share some thoughts about the Dungeons and Dragons Keynote that took place on Thursday night because Elliot and I were there. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Popcorn, candy, hot dog, popsicle. Oh boy, banana orange. Bear, who ate your Super Sugar Crisp cereal?
Shaggy Dan, he'll be back.
How do you know?
Super Sugar Crisp. Eat 'em once, you want 'em twice. They're super duper good.
Let's teach him a lesson.
Shaggy loves my cereal, but he hates water. So...
Eat 'em once, you want 'em twice. I hate water.
Beat it, Shag.
I shall return.
Let's have a good breakfast featuring both Super Sugar Crisp. So super duper good, eat 'em once.
You want it twice!
Did you drink your Wilkins coffee this morning?
Of course not.
Okay. That boy's got a long way to go.
It's time for Funny Days!
Howdy. Grapes, the name. Goofy Grape. Though why they call me Goofy, I don't know. Yes, sir. I'm one of the new funny face drinks from Pillsbury.
Funny Faces Fancy Drink!
One of the new funny face drinks. Here's what you do. You pour me into a pitcher, add water, don't add sugar. I'm already sweet when you buy me. You can drink all you want. Mom won't mind. 'Cause look, Mom, I'm pre-sweetened without sugar. And so are my friends. Injun Orange. Oh. Rootin' Tootin' Raspberry.
Yahoo!
Freckle-faced Strawberry.
Hi.
Chinese Cherry. And Loudmouth Lime. Hello, hello, hello. Look for us at your store. Funny face drinks from Pillsbury.
Funny Faces Fancy Drink!
We're sweet without sugar, so no sugar mess.
Fission science creates an electronic monster so terrifying, only screams can describe it.
Come back home. Come back home. According to the evidence, Hennessy was murdered by a creature with atom rays of superhuman strength, and a creature that cannot be killed by bullets.
I said I would live to see you die.
I just came from the Bureau. They checked the murderer's fingerprints. His name is Willard Pierce. They let me have it from the files.
Petty theft, fraud, 3 months in prison, tuberculosis.
How could a tubercular man have strength enough to break those bars like that?
You think that's something? Answer this one. How could a dead man have strength enough to do it?
Fantastic, but based on scientific fact.
Please. How low they're flying?
You will stop all planes and trucks searching for radioactivity.
If you do not, many people will be killed.
There will be no other warning.
Hello! 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 They hung up before I could put a tracer on it.
Slow down, Dave.
Dave, did they? No.
Go out and kill him.
Sugar Bear, you lied. You said that was water. It was sulfuric acid. You've killed Stinky. Or Skeevy, or whatever the hell that thing's name was. I'm melting. So here's a quick little nugget of trivia regarding the creature with the atomic brain. So it stars Richard Denning. Richard Denning was the co-star of Lucille Ball on a radio show before I Love Lucy, and it was called My Favorite Husband, and it was a big hit. And they decided, as some little flying bug is in my face, get out of here. Get off me. Get off me. Anyway, so it was a big hit, and they wanted to bring it to television. So they wanted to bring Lucille Ball and Richard Denning to TV as my favorite husband, right? Lucy wouldn't have any of it. She said she wouldn't do a television show unless her husband, Desi Arnaz, was in it as her co-star. Mainly because she wanted to keep an eye on him. So I thought that was kind of interesting that Richard Denning almost became Lucy's husband on TV. And there would not have been an I Love Lucy. It would have been my favorite husband. Kind of wild. Kind of wild. All right. So, everybody, we're going to get into my Gen Con 2026 recap. So, started off, I was thinking of different ways in order to have like the smallest footprint as far as lugging stuff around, because I've number one, I know I'm old now, and we do a lot of walking at conventions, and we were going to be driving down there. Our favorite parking garage that we used to go to all the time is gone because of the construction that was down there. So I knew we would be doing some walking. And we ended up, well, okay, so this is beforehand. So I was trying to figure, okay, what do I want to do with the camera? Because we've gotten it where now, past couple of conventions, I have a monopod that's got legs on it. I would not leave my camera unattended, but I would not leave the camera unsupervised because it can fall over. This isn't like the steadiest, most structured monopod, I guess I would say. So I thought to myself, all right, do I want to have to lug around the backpack that I use? It's a camera case, really. I'm like, do I want to have to lug that around and then have to lug around review copies of stuff? And I know we're not going to be parked nearby because it's just too expensive. Like, I parked in the Marriott parking lot. Marriott's right across from the convention center. That's where the auction is held. And I try to get in there because I bring stuff to the auction, and it's just a straight shot up the elevator and you're there. Whereas anywhere else, you have to wheel your stuff. Anyway. So I thought to myself, okay, what if I use the phone on my camera? Or the camera on my phone. Phone on my camera. Yeah, man. So the camera's got a phone, man. What if I use the camera on my phone? So I had a S21, Samsung S21 Ultra. Good phone. Love it. Yeah, got a little S pen and stuff like that. Video quality was okay, not great. So I'm like, okay, I could go for a new phone. So I ordered a refurbished S24 Ultra. And I'm sure you can probably see that is my wallpaper on my home screen. Got a pretty good deal on it. And I had done some research, and they were talking about how really good the camera is. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. All right. So I ordered it. I got it the day before we leave. So granted, I mean, I had an Android phone. I had a Samsung phone. Not huge differences. Although the UI, the Android edition, was up to date, whereas the S21 Ultra was already at the end of its cycle, right? So anyway, so I had to learn how to use this as quickly as I could. But I was like, okay, cool. So the camera on this is pretty good. So this was going to go on the monopod. I ordered a head to put on the monopod that would hold this in place to shoot video. So I thought, okay, because one of the other things I'm always trying to do is trying to make life easier for Elliot as well. Because was it last Gen Con? Maybe it was at Gen Con before that. He helped out, and he was like, I think it was like Saturday. It's like, damn, man, I forgot how much work this really is. I'm like, well, yeah, kind of is. So it's like, well, okay. Keith McGrath is asked, how many Gen Cons have I been to? I actually talked about that last week, and I seem to recall coming up with a total of, so I went to, I think, 4 or 5 when it was in Milwaukee. And then I have been to every Gen Con since 2011, except for the COVID year was canceled. I may have missed one. I didn't go digging around, but quite a lot. So I've been to quite a lot of Gen Cons. Kevin R. Smith's pointing out that Lucy fought hard to get Desi on the show because the execs didn't want an Anglo woman married to a Latino man on TV. Something else was that the only character that could make fun of Ricky's accent was Lucy. No other character could be written to make fun of his accent. Reading Aid asks, do I think Gen Con's becoming the San Diego Comic-Con of the board game and tabletop role-playing game industry? I think it's been that way for a while. Just got a news piece today talking about how there were 74,000 attendees who were there, and over, I think they said over 800 exhibitors. But that was pretty wild as well. So before we continue, I do want to mention, I always like to thank our Patreon members during the live shows. So tip of the cap to Ben Oldthwaite, Kuval, Kevin R. Smith, Talzek, Peaceful Porcupine, William King, the Tabletop Scholar, Sean O'Donnell, Herman Lutman, Gustavo Covalho, Kevin King, Game Cat, RPG Munch, Tier 2 DM, Firedrift, Pete Stracklich, Dan Webb, Tessie Trekkie, Agile Monk, The Madman, and Flint Fireforge. And you will notice a good number of those folks are hanging out in chat with us. Thank you very much. Thank you kindly. So yes, I think Gen Con's been the San Diego Comic-Con of tabletop gaming for quite a long time. Nobody comes close. No one comes close to it. Origins gets, I know they've talked about, their numbers are inflated usually. So I think there was one year we were there, Ellie and I were both there. Last time I covered Origins, I did it by myself. But we were there one year and they were saying, oh, there were like 21,000. And I was like, we were there in the halls, in the exhibit area. And of course, it's not as spread out as Gen Con, where there's stuff going on in the football stadium. It's going on in the hotels around the convention center. No. And it was like, get out of here. So PAX Unplugged is games. Yes, Keith McGrath asks. That was what I was going to say. The only one I think is probably close at this point, and I still don't think that it really does compete, would be PAX Unplugged, which is in Philadelphia. And I have been invited to cover it. I have not gone because, for one, it's the holiday season. It's usually right around Thanksgiving. So that's one of the reasons why I don't think PAX Unplugged is really a big challenger for Gen Con because Gen Con's the summer. PAX Unplugged is holiday season and cold weather. It's like November. It's usually in November. Hey, Phil from Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo is with us. I had a chance to talk to Phil for a little bit on Ennie's night. Says PAX Unplugged doesn't release her numbers, but best estimates are about 35,000, which is pretty damn good. It is pretty damn good. Histio's with us in chat. Good to see you once again. Reading 8 says, no more exclusive pre-releases at Origins in the future, do you think? I would say, from my experience, and I don't think things have changed too much for Origins, you will still see the pre-releases of board games. Role-playing games tend to come out at Gen Con. Although the reality is, we're seeing more and more board gaming at Gen Con every single year. And I'll get into that in just a little bit as well. So anyway, getting ready to do Gen Con. It's looking good. So all we're going to have to do is I'm going to carry around a shoulder bag because that way I can toss like review copies of stuff into the bag. And then I've got my wireless mics. All I have to do is run from the receiver on the wireless mics right into the USB-C on the phone. I tested it all out. Everything was working great. So great. So that's all I've got to carry around. All Elliot's got to carry around is this bag that's got the monopod, which, folds up, right? So it's like, all right, cool. We're not going to have to lug around a lot of stuff. So Wednesday, I go pick up Elliot, and the first thing Elliot tells me is he's not feeling too good. Now, he had told me the same thing last year when I picked him up for Gen Con, and he was fine. There wasn't a single problem all week and weekend long. Now, normally we don't hang out on Sunday. Normally, Sunday we leave and we head back. Every once in a while, we might pop in to the convention hall. One year I had to go back. In fact, it was the prior Gen Con. I had to go back because I couldn't get paid out on my auction items that Saturday. So I had to go back Sunday morning to go get it. And I was like, yeah, okay. Richard Harris is with us in chat. Welcome. So I pick him up and he's like, yeah, I'm not feeling too good. And I'm like, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Same thing I told him last year. Drive down to Indy. And we left early because I wanted to get into the parking garage of the Marriott. Like I pointed out, if you're tuning in a little late, I had brought 25 items for the Gen Con auction. And, you go to Indianapolis, it's hot, it's humid. I'm not wheeling a cart, through multiple parking garages and stuff like that, because that's usually what you would have to do if you're not in the parking lot of the Marriott. So we left early. So we're in Indianapolis by 10:30-ish. And we got a spot in the parking garage. Of course, it's like $65 for the parking. But still, I figured, it's worth it. We're not going to have to bust our asses. So, we go and have breakfast, and then we kind of bum around. We goof off, like always. And then we go get our press passes, and then we drop the stuff off at the auction. Because you can't drop the auction items off unless you have a badge. And the press can't get press passes, their badges, until 4 p.m. on Wednesday. We were the first people in line. It was about 3:15, and we're walking in the exhibit, or I should say convention center. And I said to Elliot, we might as well just pop on over to the press room That way we're in line and it won't take us very long to get our passes. And we can go run over, get the stuff in the auction, and we're done, right? So we ended up being the first people in line by about 3 minutes. And right on the dot, 4 o'clock, door was open, got our passes, gone. So easy peasy. We just ended up going back to, we went to go check in, I should say, to a motel we were staying in about 30 minutes away. That was actually dirt cheap, and it was fine. I mean, it wasn't like a dive. In fact, there were a lot of places to eat around it, and there was actually a Walmart next door. So there you go. So we're going to be all prepared for Thursday, and of course we went out. We had dinner, we had some adult beverages, and so on and so forth. Tessie Tricky asks, is Sunday a short day at Gen Con? Yes. So there is gaming 24 hours at Gen Con. So from the time, I want to say, I think it's 8 a.m. on Thursday is when the convention officially opens until 4 p.m. Although I think 4 p.m. might be the last starting time for events. I'm not sure. Maybe like 2-hour blocks. So, but for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's 24 hours. Now, it's not necessarily in the convention center. You know, there's different rooms throughout, like ballrooms and stuff throughout the different hotels that are right there that a lot of stuff is going on. Also, Dungeons and Dragons had the D&D Tower, which I talked about last week. They had a lot of D&D events going on, including the keynote. So anyway, so Thursday rolls around, we get up, and I didn't have anything scheduled early. See, I've learned my lesson over the years. Try not to have anything scheduled until like 11 o'clock, or later, because that way I know if for some reason we overdid it the night before, we got a little extra recovery time. So we ended up getting down there a little bit later on Thursday, and we had to park way on the other side, not only of the convention center, but of the football stadium that's next to it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it was about I would say the walk itself was probably at least a mile. But they had a shuttle bus. So we parked, took the shuttle bus, took us right over, dropped us off, not in front of the convention center, but at the end of the convention center. And it was like, oh, okay, that's fine, that's cool. That was the only good time we had with the shuttle. So on Thursday, first interview I had was with Brian Holland from Chaosium Inc. So we shot the interview in the room that they had set up across from the exhibit hall, where they do gaming. Yeah, they do games and stuff. And they also have other areas where they're running, Call Cthulhu events and stuff like that. So anyway, that's where we did the interview. And I got myself a review copy of Pendragon the Boy King. I've already shot the review. I just need to edit it. In fact, I started to edit it today. That may be up a little bit later on tonight. Maybe in the wee hours of the morning. So yes, my review of the Boy King for Pendragon is done. So I got that. I also got Miskatonic Tales, Journey to Innsmouth, which is a board game. Damn, this thing is heavy. So got this, and get ready for it. Here it comes. Box is massive. Call of Cthulhu Horror on the Orient Express. Look at the size of this box. So my contact, well, it was Brian Holland at Chaosium Inc. is like, do you want to leave that stuff here and come back for it? I'm like, yes. I'm like, I am not going to be walking all over the place, lugging these three things around. Now, weirdly enough, I never went over to the exhibit area for Chaosium. And I didn't realize they had so much stuff that was there pre-release. Because I would have definitely said, hey, you know what? I might as well take copies of these. Save you guys the shipping. There was 2 new releases for Rivers of London. One is an adventure collection. I think the other is like a setting supplement, if I remember correctly. They've got a new RuneQuest book, Apple Lane, the Apple Lane campaign. And I'm assuming too, but I am hoping that that is a throwback to the original Apple Lane, which would make for the perfect introductory campaign for RuneQuest, because it's smaller in scope than most campaigns, and it doesn't involve a ton as far as different deities and pantheons and things like that. So I remember I owned Apple Lane way back. We're probably talking 79, 80. I wasn't in high school yet when I got RuneQuest. And I do remember Apple Lane, and I think that was the first time I saw the ducks. The duck folk. And I was like, what? But I seem to recall it was actually pretty cool. It was a cool campaign. So that came out. Trying to think. I think there were 1 or 2 other books. And then when I was doing my review of The Boy King, I realized I haven't reviewed the Nobles book. I was like, huh. Then I took a peek on the Chaosium website, and it looks like there was a hiccup. There are actually a couple of releases that I hadn't reviewed. So I shot an email to Brian saying, hey, you know what happened? Because he had told me that I don't have to like fill out the stuff to get review copies. So I don't know. I have no idea. Reading 8 said, yeah, they were trying to get someone to pick up a couple of Chaosium titles for them. Keith McGrath says they want to try Pendragon. Flint Fireforge is with us. Said I used adult beverages with my wife last night instead of the usual beer. Seems more benign. Plus, adult beverages usually means like a cocktail, which is what we were drinking. Okay, I had a few beers and then moved on to adult beverages. Lona's Cave is with us tonight. Tessie Trekkie said that box is huge. So, fun interview with Brian. It was the first time I interviewed Brian. I've talked to him before previously, but usually I interview either Rick Meintz or Michael O'Brien. And so that was kind of cool. Although it was kind of weird not to do an interview over at the booth, because we always do. Now, last year I interviewed Mike Mason in that room and also interviewed Rick Meintz over at the booth. So we did that. Then I went and talked to Chris Birch from Modiphius Entertainment. And it was funny. I had not talked to Chris on camera in probably 12 years. I interviewed Chris Birch when Star Trek Adventures had been announced. Pretty wild. Although I've talked to him, I've said hello to him and things like that. So that was kind of interesting. It was kind of funny because he recognized me right off the bat, because I always assume people have no clue who I am. Even if I've interviewed them before, not like umpteen times, but if I interviewed them, 3 years prior, I don't expect them to remember me. And I thought it was pretty wild because I actually was, when I was at the Chaosium, a couple of people, they were talking to me as I was waiting for Brian Holland, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm Jeff McLear. I'm with the Gaming Gang," and they're like, "We know who you are." I was like, "Oh, well, I wasn't sure. I assumed you probably didn't." And they're like, "What are you talking about? We know who you are." Kevin R. Smith said that they've seen Brian GMing actual plays with Glass Cannon. Seems like a fun guy. Yeah, he's a pretty nice guy. Like I said, he's my contact that I go through at Chaosium. Lona's Cave said they really wanted the Dungeon World 2 Quick Start booklet. I didn't even see that. I went down every aisle. Luckily, I was able to do that. But I didn't necessarily get an opportunity to really take a hard look at stuff. We're getting there. If you're tuning in a little bit late, when I picked up Elliot Wednesday morning, first thing he told me was, "I'm not feeling too good." So anyway, so I do the interview with Chris Birch. Good interview. Nice. Man, there's so much going on with Modiphius Entertainment. And we should be getting back on board with Modiphius Entertainment here on out to share reviews of different stuff. Another one of these situations where their marketing person moved on and took all their contacts with them. So I have mentioned to the person I'll be dealing with that I would like to bring you guys coverage of Star Trek Adventures and maybe Cohorts Cthulhu, because it's Lovecraftian. And there was the announcement of the XCOM miniatures game, which we'll have a news piece on tomorrow's show about. So, I'm not trying to be like, "Oh yeah, send me everything. Oh yeah, send me all the Fallout stuff and all the Cohorts Cthulhu." Oh, 5 Parsecs from Home is also another that I said I think people would be interested in, at my audience at least, would be interested in. So those were the only 2 interviews I did on Thursday. So I figured, well, I left time open, so if I had an opportunity to plug stuff in, I would, because at this point in time, I was kind of going back and forth with Pelgrane Press about interviewing Ken Hite about Trail of Cthulhu 2nd edition, as well as Professor DM to talk about Deathbringer. So I kind of left some open time there. Plus, I figured, kind of ease on in. What I tend to do when I'm at Gen Con is leave blocks open so that if I encounter something that I find really interesting and I have time and they have time, maybe do an interview real quick. That did not happen this year. So anyway, so Thursday night was the D&D Keynote, and Elliot and I had all access passes that they gave us. And we actually went through the back. We went through the back door. So we caught the keynote as I see Stephen from Roll for Combat popped up. Said, "I just entered and heard Deathbringer." I was talking about how Dan and I were trying to line up an interview at Gen Con, but we did not. We did not have an opportunity to. Keith McGrath says, "I love the first XCOM game on DOS." I played that. Played the hell out of it. Then we had, after that was XCOM Terror from the Deep. The most recent XCOM, good stuff. That's pretty cool. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the hell out of that. So yes, that's what you overheard, Stephen. Did not get something lined up. So He sent me an email today saying, well, let's try to put something together, maybe through Zoom or something like that. Anywho, so we go to the keynote, and we went up. We were sitting in the balcony, because as I pointed out, the Indiana Ballroom and Repertory Theater, it's like 6 floors. There's like a rooftop, which actually really isn't a rooftop, just the top floor, is where they usually would do press events for Wizards of the Coast, like on Wednesday before Gen Con starts. Well, they didn't do that this year. So they were having the keynote. It was Thursday at 6 p.m., if I remember correctly. So Elliot and I are sitting up in the balcony, and I said to Elliot, I said, okay, I am going to predict what we're going to see tonight. And he was like, okay, yeah, go ahead, fire away. So I had told him, I said, because it said a new era of Dungeons and Dragons or a new era of D&D, one of the two. And I said, you are going to hear them talking about returning to the game's roots and the foundations of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I had absolutely no inside dope on this. It's just reading the tea leaves, right? And I said, you know, they're going to really talk about, you know, returning to the classics and stuff like that. And some of the things I said were actually said during the keynote verbatim. And Elliot gives me a look like, what the hell? I'm like, so I'll share some thoughts. And then I will answer some of the questions that have popped up in chat. I will say, when we walked out of the keynote, I was more enthusiastic about Dungeons and Dragons than I normally am coming out of like a press event and things like that. Like the press event they had last year was, number one, it was boring. And it was sort of like, yeah, like I remember they showed some of that adventure book. I can't remember the name of the adventure book that came out, but it was like 50 adventures, and they were like 2 pages long. And I was like, how are those adventures? Those are encounters. Those are set pieces. Those aren't adventures, in my opinion, right? They're just little nuggets. I mean, granted, yeah, there were stat blocks and stuff like that, but they were like 2 pages. So, yeah. So normally when I walk out of presentations from Wizards of the Coast, I'm sort of like, This time I was like, okay. And I had even said to Elliot, I said, it's weird. Whenever even at the press events where I'm sort of like, I said, I walk out of them and I'm like, you know what? I'd like to play Dungeons and Dragons. And he says to me, he goes, you would? I said, yeah, play. I didn't say run. I said, I would play Dungeons and Dragons. I would play almost any role-playing game because I never get to play. So, all right. So it started off, I forget the actor's name. It's the voice actor who provided the voice for Will in Baldur's Gate 3. He was the host. He was good. He is personable. I mean, it was all scripted. I mean, it was an hour. It was a tight hour. They did not run over the hour. So that was cool. And then the CEO came out and I remember last year at the press event, he had been the CEO for like 4 days. And he joined us through a video conference. So anyway, see, he was there. I was kind of surprised. He dropped the F-bomb 4 times. It's kind of like, okay. I mean, I know the stigma on saying fuck or fucking is worn thin, pretty much. It's not like it once was. But I was a little surprised. I was sort of like, so is he trying to be edgy here? So anyway, so, you know, they came out and they started giving us some info about various different roadmaps, I guess I'll say, for D&D for the foreseeable future into mid 2027. So Keith McGrath says, yeah, I don't like crass language. Surprised you're hanging out here then. I mean, I don't swear all the time, but I'll sprinkle stuff in. Tessie Trekkie says, I like my scotch like I like my dark sun. Dark, brooding, and at least 21 years old. We'll get to Dark Sun in a sec. Anyway, so I had said to Elliot, this before it all started, I said, you know, the folks at Hasbro want the old timers back. They want the grown-yards back because they've got the money. This is something, if Phil from Page is still hanging around, this was something we were talking about that Friday night when I ran into him. But yeah, they want that money. They want all the monies is how it works. And I don't think they're going to get them back. They might get some, but not as much as they want. And that's why they decided that they're going to now turn around and embrace the legacy of D&D. Although weirdly enough, Dave Arneson was never mentioned. I was very surprised by that. They mentioned Gary Gygax. In fact, they mentioned Gary Gygax a few times. Dave Arneson, not a peep. In fact, I had thought when it was over, it was wrapping up, I was so tempted to yell, Dave Arneson! I thought, no, I don't want to be the guy where they're like, oh, it's McAleer. Always a thorn in our side. So they had Bob Salvatore, they had Tracy Hickman, they had Joe. I could never get his name right. There was one other person I thought they brought out as far as, you know, like old timers who were around during the TSR days, I should say. Maybe it was Joe. No, because I guess Joe M has a setting that's going to come out for D&D. So he talked a bit about that. And then they also talked about Greyhawk and Luke Gygax I don't know if he's going to be like lead designer on it. I think he is, well, he's involved with it, but I don't think he's the lead. So we had that. I guess Tracy Hickman's working on something too. I don't believe they're going to do Dragonlance. Or maybe they did say Dragonlance. You know what? I think they did. And I said to Elliot, I said, they just did a Dragonlance 2 years ago, and it was kind of a flop. So, I mean, it kind of was. I mean, that game that they sold, they had a box that had the game as well as the supplement, the book. It was like $100. And then I saw it in a liquidation store for $10. I was like, well. Christopher Lundgren says, I think it's possible. Good to see you again, Chris. Even Eric Tenkar said it's a cautious, hopeful change in direction. And he's mostly big on OSR. Oh, yeah, he's big on OSR. And he said, give WotC a chance, don't prejudge. I am not. I'm certainly not prejudging. Like I had mentioned, Chris may have missed this. I walked out of that keynote with enthusiasm, as opposed to normally I'm just like, I don't know about that. Right? So I'm like, I don't know. But there was another part where they had the actual players, I guess we would say, from Dungeon Masters, which I guess is the Wizards of the Coast version of Critical Role. I think I'm pretty sure it's an actual play. And they came out and I'm sure they're fine. But it was so corny, so scripted, so hammy. And it just went on for way too long. I mean, to me, it kind of brought the proceedings to a screeching halt. Anyway, so we've got Greyhawk. Greyhawk's going to be on the horizon. So Greyhawk's going to make a return. I got to be honest, I don't know what they've got planned for this kind of stuff. Is it going to be a single book like we've seen before from Wizards of the Coast? Like with Eberron and what the hell is it? Starjammer? How is it? Forget, I was never really into it. Space Jammer? Whatever jammer. Jibber Jammer? Is it going to be that? Or are we going to have additional supplements? Spelljammer, thank you, Kevin. Like I said. Keith McGrath is also like Spelljammer. Yeah, I know. I'm kicking myself because I'm like, like, okay. So I don't know. It would be cool if we're going to get like a source book and then we'll have other releases as well. I just don't think that's going to be the case. Now they're doing the seasons, right? So Greyhawk, their season is going to come before Dark Sun. And they showed a trailer, an animated trailer for Dark Sun. And it was pretty gory and violent. So I turned to Elliot while that was going on and I said, so this is going to be mature audience. It's got to be. And it will be. They're talking about they're going to sell the book in a blind bag. I'm like, okay, are we going to have a little TNA on the cover? What's going on with that? So Dark Sun is going to be arriving. If I remember correctly, it is later in 2027. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think that's the last of the items on the roadmap that they were sharing. There's also going to be a Dungeons and Dragons World of Warcraft. That doesn't even move the needle for me. Elliot was kind of like, oh, that's kind of interesting because he plays World of Warcraft, he and his family. And he had said he was kind of surprised that there wasn't a World of Warcraft role-playing game already. And I was like, yeah, I am kind of surprised that nobody ever jumped on board with that. But then again, the new CEO, or newer, this has been there a year, CEO came from Blizzard. And he worked on World of Warcraft. So I guess he's got the connections. So then we wrapped up with the house lights going down. And then you heard Darth Vader breathing. And then you see this lightsaber coming across the stage. And the lights come back up. And there's Darth Vader. And it says Dungeons and Dragons Star Wars. And that pretty much wrapped up the show. Keith McGrath says, I'm sure Dark Sun will do good just based on its infamy. I'll be the first to point out, I told Elliot the same thing because he kind of knew it. I've never seen anything for Dark Sun. I mean, I've seen some of the artwork and I've heard stories about it. And I know one of the big deals about why they haven't returned to Dark Sun is because slavery plays a big role in that setting. And it's kind of a grim, dark setting, I believe. Once again, I've never read it. I have no experience with it, but I know a lot of people were looking forward to a return of that. Maybe. I know every time that Wizards of the Coast through 5e, we're like, oh, we're doing Eberron. People would be like, where's Dark Sun? I want Dark Sun. Kevin R. Smith says, sounds like they're making Dark Sun even edgier than it was in the 90s. I mean, Lorraine Williams would only let TSR get away with so much back in the day. Yeah. We have heard those stories. It is going to be mature audience only. That's why, like I said, I believe the core book is going to be sold in one of those blind bags where it's just a black plastic bag around it. So that is a possibility. Some other things that were mentioned, we're going to see like Kobold Press, and this was mentioned in my interview with Dot over at Kobold Press, although the sound is awful on that interview. We'll get to that in a minute. Kobold Press is going to release an adventure supplement set in the Forgotten Realms. So there was some discussion of some additional third-party content that's going to be more in lockstep with Wizards of the Coast, as opposed to just being like open game license stuff. And one of those is actually going to be, one of those companies is going to be Kobold Press. Funny enough, I cannot reveal who this was, but I had another role-playing game company ask me my opinion about teaming up with Wizards of the Coast. And I was really surprised. I thought it was very cool that, you know, they thought enough of my opinion or my opinions to ask me my thoughts about it. And I did provide it. I did provide my thoughts. So I thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, the one thing that I talked to Elliot about when the keynote was over that I'm not keen on is the drive by Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro to have, you know, to put this mindset out there that you only need one role-playing game, and it's Dungeons and Dragons. That Dungeons and Dragons can do everything you want it to do. Dungeons and Dragons, World of Warcraft. Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars. Now remember, it's not World of Warcraft, the role-playing game. It's Dungeons and Dragons, World of Warcraft. It's not Star Wars, the role-playing game. So I guess that means Edge Studio has lost, as I guess I should say Asmodee will no longer have the publishing rights to role-playing games for Star Wars. I don't know. I would think that's probably the case. Maybe not. So I had said to Elliot, I'm not too keen on that. That you're going to see these IPs come out for Dungeons and Dragons, and they will be promoted as Dungeons and Dragons. So as an example, we already know it's a Free League publishing IP at the moment, but it'd be like you'd see Dungeons and Dragons Blade Runner, Dungeons and Dragons Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't want to see that. And I do understand that there are gamers out there who want that. It's like, well, I only want to have to know one system, and that system might as well be Dungeons and Dragons. Rick Sherman's with us in chat. Might be a first-time visit because I, not recognizing the name, said D&D even made a 5e variant for Traveler. Like some of us don't want to play D20 systems. I prefer old school D6, 2D6, I should say, Traveler. I don't believe it. If you're talking about the recent crowdfunding project that was for Traveler for 5e, That was an outside company. That was not Wizards of the Coast, and it was not Mongoose Publishing either. That is one of the reasons why I actually didn't share news about it, because it didn't look great. And I don't just share news for the sake of news. Christopher Lundgren says, why don't they just call it 5.5 Star Wars? Makes more sense. Kevin R. Smith also points out that Traveler for 5e was another company, and it was a company I'd never heard of. Phil from Page says, Spaceballs, the role-playing game. All right, so that is my thoughts on the keynote. Let's go finish up, talk about Gen Con. So on Friday, that was our busy day. I talked to Cobalt Press, talked to Dot, because Wolfgang Bauer was not at Gen Con this year, because I always talk to Wolfgang. But I had a lot of fun talking with Dot. Sadly, there was a lot of background noise where we were at. It was the only interview, because I forgot the lavalier mics on Thursday. And it was like, hey, you know what? The audio is okay for those two interviews. I didn't have to do any noise reduction, anything like that. So I don't like to do that because it really screws with how the voices sound. Keith McGrath is asking, did I play any games? I did not play any games. My best friend, Elliot Miller, who does camera duty, basically, which life was so much easier for him this time out. He was sick, and it wasn't anything contagious. It was something that it's a chronic condition that he has. I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to violate OSHA rules or HIPAA. It'd be HIPAA rules. But it's something that's painful and discomforting. So we didn't, because my game plan was we would do our stuff, we'd kind of bum around, and then go back to our room at 9, 10 o'clock, maybe play a couple of games. I had brought some games to play. No, that didn't happen. Anyway, so Cobalt Press talked to Dot. That was great. And I got a copy of Hastening Doom. So we're going to take a peek at this. I will do a review of this. This will be available in PDF. You will not be able to get physical copies. We talk about it in the interview, but you may not have been able to understand it. But the printer made extra copies, so they brought them to Gen Con, and Dot was kind enough to give me a copy. Dot also mentioned, because I had asked, is Midgard going anywhere? Because, they're going to do an adventure book for Forgotten Realms. I even pointed out, I said, because I notice when adventure supplements are set in Midgard, they have more of an old school feel than adventures which are not set in Midgard. And Dot said Midgard's not going anywhere, that they are going to continue to publish content set in Midgard. But of course, there's going to be other adventures, other supplements that are not set in Midgard. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's fine. So that was fun. Sadly, Klantos is with us in chat. Says, Jeff, you can go back and clean up some of the audio. Ha, I tried. The audio you get in that video has been treated. That's the best I could get it, where we don't sound like a couple of robots. And you still would have a hard time making out what was being said. I recommend, if you're watching that interview, turn on the closed captions. They're not too far off, so you'll get the gist. But yeah, and strangely enough, there's over 1,000 views on that. And I have not gotten tons of complaints about the audio, although I do put in the notes. Nothing I could do. I mean, it sounded loud, but it didn't sound any louder than anywhere else that we had been. Next up, Monte Cook Games. I talked with Sean K. Reynolds, and we discussed Cypher because the character rule book came out at Gen Con. We're going to take a first look at this on tomorrow's show. So we are going to have a sprinkling of first looks on the dispatch for the next 2-3 weeks. In fact, the reality is I would like to kind of sprinkle in some shows we're talking about a topic, some shows we're doing a first look at something. So we're going to kind of do a mashup. And I probably won't know what we're doing until like the night before. So there is that. So tomorrow, we're going to be taking a peek at this. And then I think Thursday, I bet Chris is going to like this. I think we'll take a first look at Call of Cthulhu Miskatonic Tales Journey to Innsmouth. Man, this box is heavy. This box is almost as heavy as the Horror on the Orient Express box. And that's just a huge cube. So anyways, that was a pretty good interview with Sean K. Reynolds. I had never had an opportunity to talk to him before. And then I talked to the marketing woman for Monty Cook Games, who is super nice. She is very, very nice. She's over in England. So not only did I get that, I got the new supplement for the Magnus Archives. Is that Create Your Own Statement? Oh, Make Your Statement. This has, I want to say 10 investigations in it. So we've got that. We also have All Your Gods Are Dead, Roll Gods of Appalachia. For some strange reason, I thought I reviewed this, but I got a copy of it. If for any reason I do have an extra copy, I will make this available somehow. But then I also got Come Hell or High Water, which I know that's new. So we got quite a few items from our friends over at Monty Cook Games. And we talked a bit about the new edition. So kind of dove on in. I had asked, see, now one thing, when I interview people, I try to have a conversation with them. So I ask questions. Now, there are times that there are games out there that maybe I zone out on. So I don't ask questions about it or like say, oh, what's on the horizon for XYZ game? But I give my subject plenty of opportunities to bring stuff up that I haven't mentioned. And a lot of times they don't bring it up, which brings us to the Cubicle 7 Entertainment interview, which I have an eye for things. So we walk up and there's a couple of, I think there were 4 demo areas for Cubicle 7 Entertainment. And I liked the background, which I think was for Wrath and Glory, if I remember correctly. And there was a Game Master screen sitting there. And then there were like, it was from the starter set, pre-gens and stuff. And my good friend T.S. Luckhart, who is part of Cubicle 7 Entertainment, because it's Cubicle 7 Entertainment. Maybe T.S. was joking with me one day when he said, yeah, you know, we prefer being known as games. And that's why I've been calling it Cubicle 7 Games for a couple of years now. And Dom gives me this look like, why are you calling it Cubicle 7 Games? Well, because I'm an idiot. What can I tell you, right? I think, you know what it might, part of it have been is because the website domain name had changed to cubicle7games.com, you know? So anyway, so the interview is I'm sitting at the table. Dom is sitting behind a Game Master screen and I'm doing the interview there. So it's funny because TS was like, here, let me get that stuff out of the way. And I'm like, no, leave it. I love it. So that was that. And we talked about tons of stuff. Didn't talk about Soulbound. And I saw there was a comment. Somebody was like, what, no Soulbound? I was like, I don't do the Soulbound reviews. So for one, it's never like at the front of my mind because Sammy does the reviews for Soulbound stuff. So But yeah, that was a good interview. I had fun with that. And I am pretty much up to date with Cubicle 7 Entertainment stuff. So I did not bring stuff back from them. I already had it. I will have my review of the Supervisor's Guide for the Laundry Role-Playing Game, the second edition of the Laundry Role-Playing Game. As hopefully, yeah, it'll be this week because I'm ready to shoot it. So next up, John D. Soper from Dice Throne had reached out in an email asking me to stop by. And I've heard of Dice Throne. I know it's popular. I know they get a Marvel with different Marvel characters and stuff like that, but I wasn't overly familiar with it. So I went, met with her, did an interview. She gave me a couple of characters. The Druid and a non-Druid. Get what it is. They're actually upstairs. I forgot to grab them and bring them down here. So I'm going to get to check that out. So that's nice. Semper Buffo said they're looking forward to the new edition of Wifrip. So am I. Oh, I did ask about a conversion guide. I know people out there are curious about having a conversion guide for the old world to be able to utilize all of those Wifrip adventures, plus a classic The Enemy Within campaign. And it was kind of funny because I had mentioned it to Don before we started the interview because I wanted to make sure, because it might have been like, no, we don't want to talk about that because we want people to buy this, which he could have said, right? And he was like, yeah, he said, you know what? We've been kind of kicking that around. We're trying to figure out exactly how the conversion goes down. Oh, like, gotcha. But yeah, that's something that they are looking to do. I would assume it'd be free. I would think it'd be a free PDF. I don't think they'd be charging for it. But yes, we did talk about the new edition of Wifrip that is on the horizon. If I remember right, it is not a Kickstarter. In fact, Dom pointed this out to me because I had forgotten this. Cubicle 7 Entertainment, for their own in-house stuff, has never kickstarted something, has never crowdfunded something, I should say. It's always the stuff from Vault 5e, like Victoriana, I think it's 5e, right? So that crowdfunded, but that wasn't designed in-house. So that was a really good interview. I enjoyed that. The Dice Throne interview was fine, but you can tell when I don't know someone, I've never met them. And it was funny, Johnny thought that we had talked before, and I was like, maybe? I don't know. Because, I've been doing this a long time. And if it was somebody, I interviewed once at some other company 8 years ago, I'm not going to remember that. So you can tell I'm not as kind of loosey-goosey. I mean, the interview's fine. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I'm kind of surprised by the number of views. I'm actually surprised by the number of views all of these videos are getting. And I will wrap up with that in a few moments. So anyway, good interview. I wouldn't say it's like top of the charts, but stay tuned. I will share some coverage of Dice Throne. Then I wrapped up Friday with Free League Publishing. Talked to Tomas. We discussed quite a few things, including the two new supplements for the One Ring that I had a news piece about earlier. Talked about a bunch of different stuff. Talked about, I actually asked what was going on with that Operation Reset. I couldn't remember the reset part of the title. For Twilight 2000, we talked a little bit about that. We talked about Invincible, which I've shared my review of the starter set. And I will have my review of the core rule book very shortly. I finished reading it. I haven't shot it yet. Chris Lundgren says they were told Mark Hunt was at Gen Con with some new SR and OSR systems Shocked to hear that. Also, how was the rain, flood, and tornado? I'll talk about that also. Keith McGrath says, super cool people seek you out. I'll be the first to tell you, I don't get a lot of people reaching out to me. If you're a board game company, probably not. Role-playing game companies, yeah. But I am also not somebody who goes walking up to strangers and like, oh, hey, how about giving me a review copy of stuff? Oh, I'll take this. Because that's the shtick that some outlets do. That's not me. I don't do that. Anyway, so over at Free League, we talked about these convention exclusive adventures that you can only get at conventions. Now, it wasn't just Gen Con. Others as well. So we've got Invincible, Alien, the role-playing game, Evolved Edition, Vesson. We talked about this a little bit, as well as Dragonbane. And I should mention, I've got the 2 Dragonbane books. I already had them, so I didn't have to snag them from Free League Publishing. So I got these. Sweet. So we will probably do a first look show and just take a peek at all of them at one time, so people can have an idea of these convention exclusives. I don't know if they'll be available in PDF or not. I don't recall if Tomas, because I know he had talked about them being convention exclusives. I don't recall if he had mentioned that they were going to be exclusive completely, that you couldn't pick up the PDFs. Like Hastening Doom, this was a backer kit that Cobalt Press did. That was part of that Mega Dungeon month. So the PDF is going to be available. You just won't be able to pick this up physically any longer. All right, so that was Friday. I was like, hey, Elliot, you want to hang out? And he's like, no, I'm really not feeling too hot. I said, okay, well, we'll go back to the room, grab something to eat, play a couple of games. I brought some stuff. I'd actually brought some games that we had both played, so we could kind of jump right on in. And during the drive, he was like, man, I'm feeling just awful. And it got worse all night, to the point where he thought I might have to take him to the hospital. Thankfully, that was not the case. So anyway, I said, well, get some sleep. We'll get up in the morning and then we'll take it from there. So I got up at 7 because I wanted to get down by the convention center again early to get the best possible parking I could, because that walking shit from Thursday all the way to the other side of the parking lot for the football stadium was bullshit. I was like, man, sweat was just pouring off us. So anyway, I got up. I asked Elliot, how was he feeling? He's like, I don't know. A little bit better. And he said, I'll take a shower, tell you how I feel. So he says, well, I'm thinking maybe I'll just stay here at the room all day. And then, you go do what you got to do. You come back, maybe we go out, we, hang out tonight. I was like, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we try this? I said, see if you can muscle through. We got 2 interviews today. Now, granted, one was at 1:00, the other was at 5. I said, I will see if we can do these early. Then we'll go over to the auction. I'll get my payout from the auction, and then we will come back to the room. We'll check out early. I will drive you home. So that's what we did. And he muscled his way through it. So we stopped by Pelgrane Press. So I interviewed Ken Haidt, who I had not actually talked with 14 years or so. I see him all the time. I see him at conventions constantly. I see him at comic conventions in the Chicago area because he lives in Chicago. He's a Sox fan. And, of course, Elliot and I are Cubs fans. Let me at him. Let me at him. So we talk about the upcoming edition of Trail of Cthulhu. It is second edition. We talked about things that have changed, things that have been streamlined, and so forth. And that is on the horizon. I guess the PDFs, if I remember correctly, the PDFs are going out to the backers. Then it's going to the printer. And they're hoping, if I remember correctly, I think they're hoping to fulfill sometime before the end of the year and then have it in retail early in the year. So I think that is the game plan there. So it's a good interview. It's a solid interview. And once again, like I started saying, my interviews are conversations. So I tend to know things about the company. I tend to know things about the stuff we're going to talk about. And if I don't, I do my best to try to find out ahead of time. I am not somebody who just walks up and says, okay, so why don't you tell me what's new? And then just let somebody talk and I just stand there. To me, that is absolutely boring. I'm like, no, thank you. That's why sometimes I kind of, I goof off a little bit. I joke around, stuff like that. It is not unusual for me to be doing an interview if it's fairly straight-laced. Come about the 10-minute mark, my eyes start to glaze over. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Ravenclaw's with us. I may have pointed that out before. The Tabletop Scholar has also popped on into chat. And then I wrapped up with an interview with Stephen Chenault over at Troll Lord Games, and that is a fun interview. Good joking around. We still talk about a bunch of stuff that's cooking with the Troll Lords, including an upcoming crowdfunding project that'll be for a release for Amazing Adventures. We talked about Castle Zagyig, how things are going with that, how Troll Lord Games releases something pretty much every 2 weeks, which I had pointed out is pretty prolific. I really don't know of any other publisher of practically any size out there releasing content every fortnight, right? I mean, that's pretty incredible. So we talked about that, and then we talked a little bit about UFOs and Steven's upcoming trip. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Surprisingly, I didn't run across Steven from Roll for Combat. I usually see him bopping around. But anyway, so that's what we wrapped up with. And we were done and out the door at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So people curious about the rain and the tornado and that. I was not at the convention center. I was not in Indianapolis when that was taking place. I was driving through it. And I was like, Elliot brought up a video. I was not watching it. I could hear it. And it was this guy. I don't know how old he was. He was probably younger than 30. And he's like, oh, yeah, rain's pouring in through parts of the roof. And there's a tornado warning going on. He's like, it's pretty wild. I've never been in a tornado before. And I was like, yeah, and you still haven't, dummy. It's a tornado warning. You are not in a tornado. And then a moment afterwards, he says, yeah, this is a really boring tornado warning. And I thought, well, it wouldn't be so boring if the tornado hit. I'm like, man, it's like people revel in displaying their stupidity online. I've never been in a tornado before. I've never been swallowed by quicksand before, nor are you going to be now. Like, geez. Keith McGrath asks, is Troll Lord a unique system? It is Castles and Crusades, what they are best known for. And Keith says, Jeff, you're hardcore. I was trying to get Elliot home. I was doing my best. I wanted to get my best friend home. He's feeling like shit. So, because he didn't know what it was. He didn't find out it was a flare-up of this chronic condition he's got until he went to like urgent care on Monday. Or no, I'm sorry, that was on Sunday he went to urgent care. So yeah, I was home. I walked in the door to my house, and it's a little over a 4-hour drive because we stopped to grab something to eat as well. And then, of course, with the pouring rain, and it was like some of the hardest sustained rain I have seen in years. I mean, there were points in time we were doing 35 down the highway, and I had my hazards on so that people wouldn't drive into the back of me. It was coming down so hard. There was a truck in front of us, and it looked like it was a completely white truck. When I say it was in front of us, it was about maybe 2 car lengths ahead of us. In the back, I mean, the water, rain just pounding down. Looked like it was a white truck. The rain lightened up a little bit because it kept like breaking, and we were like, oh, maybe that's the end of it. And then it'd be like, bam, for well over half the trip. So there was a little bit of a break in the rain. It turned out it was not a solid white truck. It was a white truck with a huge FedEx across the back of it. We could not see that 2 car lengths away. That's how, heavy the rain was. Pretty wild. It was pretty wild. So that was it for my Gen Con experience, sadly enough. The usual way I approach Gen Con is I'll meet some new people, press the flesh a little bit, get my card out there, say, hey, check out the outlets. If you're interested in maybe getting some reviews out there, just reach out, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, I'm not one of these guys who walks up and go, hey, you don't know me? Give me stuff. No, not my thing. Although I did run into Brian Shutter, the mastermind of Vast Grim, talked to him a little bit and secured a copy of their starter set box. So we're going to be taking a peek at this. Cool. Because I've been looking, I've been trying to get on board. We've kind of gone back and forth over the past couple of years about maybe doing something. I figured, well, I'm here. What the hell? So there you go. Anyway, I have heard from people saying that there's been very little coverage of role-playing games and miniature games from Gen Con. So I was surprised, like I want to say it's my Monty Cook interview has over 2,000 views. Troll Lord Games, which went live, I want to say that went live on Sunday afternoon, night, has over 1,000 views. So I think that my Chaosium Inc is around 2,000 views, which is different. I mean, usually, for the most part, and this goes back years, our convention coverage videos pull in a few hundred. Maybe they'll crack 1,000. But for the most part, unless you're like a big outlet, like Glass Cannon had, all their videos that they were popping out there. Unless, you're a larger outlet like that actually has like a production budget, you don't get a lot of views. That's why I was I was like, wow, huh? I'm like, this is kind of weird. I'm like, okay, I'm not complaining. I'm more than happy. And even the Kobold Press interview with the terrible audio has over 1,000 views. And, like I said, the audio's awful. There's not much I could do about it. I've cleaned it up as much as I possibly can. There are some points where it's like, I was trying to do like subtitles for it, right? The closed captions. I don't know what's being said. And I was there. So it's like, okay. Christopher Lundgren says, true. Most YouTube channels covered board games at Gen Con or dice and cosplay. Yeah, it was so weird. This was on Thursday. There was someone from a local channel or local outlet interviewing some guy who was dressed as, I want to say he was dressed as a wizard. And they were talking to him about his costumes and how he dresses up and stuff like that. And I said to Elliot, I always find it funny how like the local media will come down to cover Gen Con, and they've been doing it for a long, long time, yet they still have absolutely no clue what this convention is actually about, or at least the correspondents that they send don't know. Because the interview was like, it was a cosplay convention. And it's like, what? I was like, okay. But yeah, that's kind of how Gen Con has become. Gen Con used to always be a role-playing game convention first, and then board games. It is now more board games than role-playing games. And I had also mentioned to Elliot, sadly, that a great number of the companies that are out there that are producing board games, a lot of them be like, okay, I've never heard of this company before. They must be relatively new on the scene. But the vast majority of the hotness for board games at any one point, the majority of those games will end up being meh. I mean, that's the reality of it. That a lot of times it is the hype, not the actual content of the game that drives word of mouth. And that's kind of sad. Clantos asks if I ever interviewed Goodman Games. And Agile Monk says, yes, I have interviewed them. Actually, I have not. And Joe Goodman is not big on doing interviews, is what I understand. Now, he'll do interviews with like the Spellburn folks, because that is the Dungeon Crawl Classics, or I guess we would say Goodman Games. Kind of like, I don't want to say house organ, but it's devoted to that. So yes, I know Joe Goodman has popped in from time to time on that show, but outside of that, my understanding is he's it's just not his thing. And that's fine. That's cool. We talked about Goodman Games in the past, about how, they don't really care about reviews and stuff like that. And that's fine. They want word of mouth. I will tell you, I did not bring it down here. It's upstairs. I bought a copy of the X-Crawl Classics core book because it was $10. It was a soft cover, but that's one of the things Goodman Games does, is they'll do soft covers of their core books. So it's Dungeon Crawl Classics, Mutant Crawl Classics, and now X-Crawl Classics, $10 at the convention. And for $10, I had to do it. I had to buy it. There was no getting around it. And Elliot was like, wow. It's like, you're actually buying a game. And I said, yeah. And not only am I buying the game, I am buying a role-playing game that I am 99% positive I will never run, but I want to check it out because I want to review it. He's like, oh, okay. And I even told the person I bought it from at Gen Con, they were there at the exhibit booth, and they were somebody who was like well-versed in Goodman games. I even said, I'm a reviewer. I don't buy games. I said, but I like Goodman game stuff enough that I'm actually buying this. It was cool. So Reading Aid says the only time they've seen Joe Goodman in an outside interview was with Steven from Roll for Combat. How did that guy get that interview? How the hell did that happen? All right, we're going to wrap this up because it's a 2-hour show already. I know it's been a while since there was a show, so I'm not, I am going to try to be a little more conversational on the show. I mean, I think I am already, but I think sometimes I spend a little too much time like stopping to try to, what are the exact words I want to use here? How do I want to present this? And, I don't necessarily need to come off that thoughtful. So Stephen from Roll for Combat says, I was going to stay. He's on my show all the time. But Stephen, am I correct that Joe Goodman's not real big on just popping up on outlets doing interviews? I mean, that was my understanding. I could be wrong. Maybe he just doesn't want to do an interview with me. Because I ask those hard-hitting questions. I ask questions. That's important. And I do follow up. And that's important too. Drones with us says, we are hardcore fans. It is that deep. Steven says he is not, but Steven has known him for 20 years. Well, yeah, then of course I could easily see that. All right. So that is it for my Gen Con recap. Like I said, it's not really, well, this is what was there and that's what was there and this was selling out and wow, this was flying off shelves and people were all talking about this. It's, okay, this is what I did. This is what I experienced. And like I said, sadly, Elliot was sick. So I had kind of half of the experience. Well, a little more than that because we got down there Wednesday and bummed around. But as far as things went, like Saturday, it was, we're getting these 2 interviews. We got a few more rows to take a peek at that I haven't seen. And then we're going. We'll get out. I'll get you out. I'll get on the road. And I knew it was going to be bad out. But I was like, I'll get you on the road, man. I will get you home. Keith says, I'll try to check out the new Cypher review tomorrow. Please keep in mind, it's a first look. I have not cracked this open. So I know there are outlets out there who do unboxings and first looks, and they say, oh, it's a review. I can't believe people will like title something unboxing and review. And it's like, how is it both? You took the stuff out of the box. You can't provide a review of it. You just saw it for the first time. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just old. I understand what words actually mean. Review is not overview. Big difference. Anyway, so yes, please keep in mind, it will be a first look. And then, especially for Christopher Lundgren, we will take a look at Call of Cthulhu, Journey to Innsmouth. Miskatonic Tales, Journey to Innsmouth on Thursday's show. Reading Aid says, think about coming to PAX Unplugged if you can, Jeff. You know, the reality is I could. I mean, I went to Page, so I flew into Philly anyway, right? It's just a few things. Number one, covering a show by yourself is not easy. I mean, if you're shooting video, it is not easy. And I don't want to like have a selfie stick and be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. No, I don't want to do that. So that is the first part. Because you got to keep in mind, it is super easy. especially using that monopod that's, got feet on it. Super easy for somebody to knock something over. That's why this year I went and I got a new phone, because I did not want to have to bring a $2,000 camera. And that is the lesser of the two Panasonics that I've got. I didn't want to bring a $2,000 camera and have somebody knock it over or whatever, because that is always a risk. And, the costs flying solo, you're not splitting anything with anybody, so you're on the hook for all of the hotel room. So, I mean, I'd love to check it out. I hear it's a great show. I really do. I had even bounced around maybe going back to Origins. I still have some issues with Gamma that I just can't get past. Kind of like behind the scenes stuff that prevents me from covering certain companies out there, that kind of stuff. I'm like, nah. Tabletop Scholar says, I appreciate you look through everything. A lot of people just throw up the PDF, scroll through it, obviously for the first time. That's their review. I will say there are people out there who will share the review. They have read it, and then they share a review using the PDF. There are a good number of outlets out there who do that. I'll tell you, the main reason why I don't is because if I started doing that, then I would never see physical books again. It's like, well, Jeff, you did a review of that. It was a PDF. Why aren't you doing a review of the PDF I want to send you? And it's kind of like, this is sort of work, right? So the least somebody could do is be like, okay, I'll send you the physical book. Plus, there's just something about flipping through the pages and just hanging out, being like, oh, man, check out that artwork there. And, hey, let's explore this a little further. As opposed to just, the flatness of a PDF. But, yeah, it's mainly because I know damn well if I was like, yeah, that's fine, I'll accept a PDF, that soon it would just all be PDFs. Something else. Okay, and maybe this sounds kind of asshole-ish, but I also look at it where you will tend to see the stuff that's out there because I get people all the time asking me to review stuff that doesn't look like it's up my alley, I guess I'll say. I'll put it nicely. And a lot of times it's only the PDF. I get a ton of people who want to send me their betas on stuff. I get a lot of people who want me to give them advice on their role-playing games that they're working on. And it's kind of like, really? Like, okay, for one, I don't know if I'm the guy to talk to. And two, how about, well, it's not free. The experience doesn't come free. But a lot of times it's a PDF and it's an excuse for me to say no. It's something I can fall back on and say, well, I only do reviews of physical books, physical items. I do not do PDFs. I do not do electronic stuff unless it's a Kickstarter preview and then I've been paid for that video. So that's different. I'll mess around with PDFs if I'm being paid for the video. So I know, me, I try to be transparent. I try to tell people, the honest to God truth about how things operate around here. So, and of course, I feed on children's blood. So that's what keeps me young. Yeah, right. All right. So, Keith McGrath says, thanks. They're enjoying the longer stream. Well, usually we're about an hour and a half at least. But yeah, I know there were no shows last week. There were only, 2 shows the week before. So yeah, we're kind of making up for it. But that is it for this time out. If you were watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, get a tip of the cap. Because not only are you keeping me company, you're also keeping each other company as I'm sharing the news or pontificating about a topic, carrying on about something, regaling you with my trip to Indianapolis, etc., etc. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very kindly for taking the time out to watch any of the videos here on the channel. It is really appreciated. And then, of course, if you enjoyed the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. If you're watching on a mobile device, if you got a few hype points, feel free to sprinkle a few on top. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do. If you do, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, select all notifications, because that way you'll not only find out when the Dispatch streams live, most Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube. You'll also be informed when I share other videos, such as my upcoming review of Pendragon, the Boy King from Chaosium Inc. Yeah. Should be up later tonight, maybe wee hours in the morning. I don't think I'm going to wait till tomorrow morning to post it. I think just post it once I'm done. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to see here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you for watching. And as always, I certainly hope each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.